Right. This section is all about the Rhodesian participants in the war theater, 1972, when I was there for the first time. You were how old? 18 years old. Well, let's start with the Rhodesian security forces. Because Rhodesia would not readily submit to a political structure the world wanted it to install, serious economic sanctions were put in place against the country. Now, despite all these hardships that followed, the Rhodesia maintained a powerful and professional military, to the effect that in 1977, Time magazine reported that man for man, the Rhodesian army ranks among the world's finest fighting units. Boy, oh boy, was that true. The army was always relatively small. In 1978, 1979, that's towards the end of the war, it had grown to some 10,800 regulars, nominally supported by about 40,000 reservists. Some units, like the SAS and the Rhodesian Light Infantry, were all white. By 1978-79, the rest was majority black. The regular army was supported by the paramilitary British South Africa Police, about 8,000 to 11,000 men, of whom the majority were in fact black, and 19 to 35,000 police reservists, which, like their army counterparts, were largely white. The police reservists acted as a type of, how shall I explain it? As a type of a home guard. The Bush War, no. Let's just say this other way. Considering the arms embargo, the Rhodesian army was well equipped. The standard infantry weapon was, of course, the Belgian FN-FAL rifle, as produced in South Africa under license as the R1 rifle, supplemented by the H&K G3 rifle that came from the Portuguese forces. To this day, I still maintain that the R1 rifle, also known as the FN-FAL in Rhodesia, was the best rifle we could have had. As a matter of fact, I still have one up in my safe in the room. I bought one here in America a year or so ago. After UDI, the Unilateral Declaration of Independence, Rhodesia was heavily reliant on South African and domestically produced weapons and equipment, as well as international smuggling operations, commonly referred to as sanction busting. South Africa, of course, provided extensive support to Rhodesia in the form of a Lend-Lease program and both the official and unofficial support of many branches of the South African armed forces. The Rhodesian Air Force operated a bunch of planes. A lot of them were vintage, real vintage planes. For example, uh, Douglas Dakota transport aircraft dating back to the Second World War, British de Havilland Vampires. The arms embargo caused a lack of spare parts from external suppliers, and the Rhodesian Air Force had to find alternative means to keep its aircraft flying. Now, there's one photo in my book that people will get a giggle out of it when they look at it, but there was even a shortage of pop rivets to maintain certain sections of plane, the wing surfaces. And I took a picture of one plane that I flew on a couple of times, or numerous times, which had some of the plates on the wings temporarily fixed by using duct tape because we didn't have pop rivets. Now, of course, the South African Air Force, much larger, provided extensive training, aircraft, and air crews in support of Rhodesian Air Force operations from 1966 in the form of Hawker Hunter planes, Canberra bombers, Cessna Skymasters, as well as Aerospatiale Alouette 3s, which were later supplemented by Augusta Bells. Eland armored cars were procured from South Africa. In the last years of the wars, several Polish made T-55 tanks destined for Idi Amin's regime in Uganda were intercepted by the South Africans and diverted up to Rhodesia instead of to Idi Amin. So they got some good tanks as well. Now, talking about this duct tape and not having pop rivets. Again, this takes me back to a good friend of mine who I have, or maybe still will mention in one or two other places in the book. My friend Bart Simon, a neighbor of mine, where we ranched in South Africa. And Bart always used to say, you can run out of plans. You can run out of money as long as you don't run out of plans. Thinking back to the lack of pop rivets and using duct tape instead. It worked. Now, on the opposing side, the nationalist guerrilla forces, there were two major armed groups, ZANLA and ZANU, the Zimbabwe African National Liberation Army and the Zimbabwe African National Union. Union. That was also maybe a misnomer because sometimes Zanla and Zebra, the two fighting factions supposed to be fighting the Rhodesian forces, were seen as fighting each other as well. Not that we complained about that. Zanla tried to paralyze the Rhodesian effort in economy by planting Soviet anti-tank landmines on the roads. From 1972 to 1980, there were 2,504 recorded vehicle detonations by Russian landmines, killing 632 people and injuring 4,410. In response to this, the Rhodesia cooperated with South Africa to develop a range of mine-protected vehicles Air in the tires was replaced with water, which absorbed some of the blast and reduced the heat of the explosion. Initially, they protected the bodies with steel deflector plates, sandbags, and mine conveyor belting. Later on, of course, purpose built vehicles with V shaped hulls that were blast proof to a very large extent. As it dispersed the blast and the deaths in such vehicles became, excuse me, later, the purpose built vehicles with V shaped blast hulls dispersed the blast became, and deaths in such vehicles became unusual events. A great South African invention. Okay. The other force was Zebra. Zebra was more oriented towards Zambia for local bases. However, this was not always with full Zambia government support. By 1979, the combined forces based in Zambia of Zebra, Mkhonto Wesizwe, it was the armed wing of the African National Congress of South Africa, and Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO, who were a major threat to Zambia's internal security. I don't know if this makes a lot of sense. We can cut that out, baby. On March 3, 1978, after almost 15 years of the Rhodesian Bush War and under pressure from sanctions placed on Rhodesia by the international community and political pressure from South Africa, of all places, the United Kingdom, and the United States, the Rhodesian government met with some of the internally based moderate African national leaders in order to reach what was then known as an internal settlement. This internal settlement led to the creation of an interim government in which Africans would included in leading positions for the first time. The settlement's main goal was for the country to gain international recognition, which in turn implied that sanctions imposed against Rhodesia would result in being abolished. Well, events on the ground would not have the theater play out as planned. Zebra was responsible for shooting down two civilian Air Rhodesia Viscount planes, uh, on 3 September 1978 and 12 February 1979, respectively, using SAM's SA-7 surface-to-air missiles. The first plane, the Hunyani, Flight 825, en route from Victoria Falls to Salisbury via the resort of Lake Kariba, attempted an emergency landing in a cotton field west of Karoi. The plane hit a ditch, cartwheeled, and broke up. Now listen to this. This is the sad part of it. Of the 52 passengers and 4 crew, 38 died in the crash. However, terrorists in the area approached the wreckage, rounded up 10 survivors, and massacred them in cold blood. Those that survived the initial bursts were bayoneted, including a mother and a 3-week-old baby. 3 passengers survived by hiding in the surrounding bush, while another 5 survived as they went looking for water before the terrorists arrived at the wreckage. Reports viewing the attack negatively appeared in international journals such as Time magazine, but there was almost no acknowledgement of it by overseas governments, such as, but there was almost no acknowledgement by other magazines, much to the uh, indignation of the Rhodesian government. In February 1979, Zipra shot down Air Rhodesia Flight 827, another civilian flight, in an almost identical incident. At a memorial service held on September 8, 1978, for Flight 825's passengers and crew at Salisbury's Anglican Cathedral, about 2,000 people crowded inside, with another 500 standing outside on the steps and pavement, many listening to the service inside on portable radio sets. Prominent amongst those present in the cathedral were uniformed Air Rhodesia and South African Airways personnel, as well as Rhodesian soldiers and officers from various military units. Of course, the Prime Minister Ian Smith and several government ministers also attended, including PK van der Bijl, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. This led to the famous words of Dean John da Costa, who gave the sermon damning what he described as the deafening silence from overseas. Nobody who holds sacred the dignity of human life can be anything but sickened at the events attending the Viscount, he said. Let me rephrase that. Nobody who holds sacred the dignity of human life can anything can be anything but sickened at the events attending the events of the Viscount. But we are deafened with the voice of protest from nations who call themselves civilized. The ghastliness of this ill-fated flight from Kariba will be burnt upon our memories for years to come. For others, far from our borders, this is an intellectual manner, not one which affects them deeply. And there is the tragedy. To this day, the above words are and will forever remain ingrained in my mind. And I am choking up here where I write. Rhodesians from all walks of life cried out for retaliation. On September 10, 1978, Ian Smith advised the nation that certain areas of Rhodesia would be placed under variations of martial law as and where it was needed. Well, a lot of actions followed But two that stand out was one back into Mozambique called Chimoio Revisited. Chimoio, which was previously destroyed but rebuilt over a larger area. On September 2078, an air and land attack by Rhodesian forces to the so-called New Chimoio was revisited and for all practical purposes wiped out. Several hundred CTs were killed at the loss of 2 Rhodesians, one who was accidentally killed in a friendly airstrike. 19 October 1978. So the next large external operation by the Rhodesian forces. The military operation was against Zipra, or a training facility in Zambia. CTs, communist terrorists. And this was against Freedom Camp, which we all formerly knew as Westlands Farm, 10 miles northeast of Lusaka, the capital city of Zambia. Not in their wildest dreams did Zipra even contemplate being attacked by Rhodesian forces at a location that close to a Zambian city. About 4,000 CTs were undergoing training in that particular camp. Two other targets to be simultaneously attacked by the Rhodesians in a joint and land-air assault were Chikumbi and Mkushi camp. This was in fact the first time Rhodesian forces attacked targets this deep in Zambia. Up to that date, the only CT camps that were attacked were those very close to the Rhodesian-Zambian border. This operation was known as Operation Gatling. But for us, Rhodesian forces, that operation was immortalized in a song called Green Leader, composed and sung by a dear friend of mine, John Edmund, who himself was part and parcel of the Rhodesian army. How it took place was that Rhodesian Air Force planes flew into Zambia, remaining at very low levels so as to be undetected by Zambian radar. Yeah, right, even if the radar was working. Led by John Dixon, the squadron leader, who identified himself to Lusaka Tower as Green Leader. The Rhodesian Air Force seized control of the Zambian airspace by advising Lusaka Tower that Rhodesian fighter jets were circling the airport and that any Zambian fighter plane that attempted to take off would immediately be destroyed. John Dixon, alias Green Leader, stressed the point that the aggression was not aimed at Zambia, but at Rhodesian dissidents. So the Zambians complied with all of the Green Leader's instructions, in fact, halting all civilian air traffic as well. Very wise of them. More than 1,500 terrorists were killed. 1,500. 1,348 were wounded, and 198 reported missing after the operation. During the Portuguese rule of Mozambique, which was, or shall I say, during the Portuguese, no, I'm going to leave this out.